Hello YouTube, it's RJ the West here, and my friend Last Night WC. We're about to do another GTA Online live stream. Today we're just going to be doing thought experiments instead of stories. As long as they don't turn into stories anyway. We're going to go check to see if I'm live. To be on the safe side. I am live. Excellent. Okay, in here. By the way, on one of my thought experiments a few days ago, I actually was asking, like, about Limbo from Warframe doing his rift jump and stuff. It actually ended up turning into, like, a half-ass story. I'm gonna just go all the way up to the top. Start from the top here. It actually started out as a thought experiment, and then it turned into, like, a half-track story. Not a true story. Should probably turn on the AC. Oh, there's so many words. As soon as I turn the AC off, like not 5 minutes later, the temperature goes up by like 2 degrees. In Warframe's lore, alright, actually in here. In Warframe's lore, does Limbo use the fourth dimension to perform a rift jump? No. In Warframe's lore, Limbo uses complex math and logic to limit rift lane. Yep. Well, that's enough. Let's not worry. Oops. Let's not worry about that. I was asked that one question on using YouTube. Alright, what does it mean to private your videos? Making a video private on YouTube means locking it down so it becomes invisible to the general public, search engines, and your subscribers. Only you and specific people you explicitly invite can watch it. Nice. Talk about controlled content, am I right? Strict access. You must invite viewers by entering their... Oh, okay. I would not be doing that. First off, like, you must invite viewers by entering their email addresses in YouTube Studio. Then they must have and be logged into a Google account to watch. No notifications. Your subscribers will not be alerted that a video was uploaded or updated. Hidden from search. The video would not appear on your channel's public video tab or in YouTube search results. Reviewing system. Even when private, YouTube's automated systems can still scan the video for copyright issues and ad suitability. No comments. The comment section is completely disabled on private videos. That makes sense. Why creators use this setting? Selective sharing. To securely share private family moments, client previews, or personal footage with specific people. Preparation and processing. To upload a video as private, first you must safely write descriptions, create thumbnails, and let YouTube process HD 4K versions before it goes live. Cloud storage. To use the platform as free, unlimited storage for your personal video backups. Okay, that makes sense. Let's elaborate on that. Small YouTube channel should ever get discovered by a large voice. Ah, alright. When a small YouTube channel should ever get discovered by a large voice, would they result in privating their content? A small YouTube channel getting discovered by a large creator rarely results in them privatizing their content. Instead, it is usually a massive growth opportunity. However, there are specific intense situations where a small creator might choose to hide their videos. Why small channels usually stay public. Viral growth. A shout out from a massive creator is the fastest way to gain subscribers and views. Monetization. The sudden traffic surge can instantly qualify a small channel for a YouTube partner program. Validation. It proves the content is high quality and appeals to a large audience. When discovery forces a channel to go private. Targeted harassment. If the large creator mocked the small channel, it can trigger a wave of thousands of toxic comments and dislikes, forcing the creator to private videos to stop the bullying. Overwhelming attention. Sudden, intense scrutiny can cause extreme anxiety or panic for creators who only made videos as a quiet hobby. Privacy concerns. New viewers might dig through old videos, uncovering the creator's real name, family, location, or old content they no longer want online. Copyright fears. If the small channel uses copyrighted music or movie clips, a massive influx of viewers increases the risk of copyright strikes that could delete the channel. Let's elaborate on this. If a small YouTube channel were to specialize in music, I really should start using the speech to text, damn it. I mean, no one has ever called me out on this, but for a long time, I'm just so used to typing it down because it just gives me more direct control of what I'm typing. If a small YouTube channel were to specialize in music and gaming content, what would the consequences be should that channel be this way? Alright, I'm going to do a note here to let the AI know that I'm going to be a little bit more specific. If a small channel specializing in gaming and AI-assisted music gets discovered by a large creator, the consequences would depend entirely on whether the discovery is positive, like a shout-out, or negative, a critique. Because the content involves AI tools like Suno and Digital Audio Workstation, or DAW, like BandLab, the channel would face technical and community reactions. The positive scenario, a massive boost. If a large creator praises your music or gameplay, your channel would experience an overnight explosion. Highly unlikely. And it's actually funny that it's saying my channel, even though I'm just using a generic thing. It's like immediately pointing out that. Instant fan base. You will gain thousands of subscribers who love gaming soundtracks, remixes, or custom background music. Streamer adoption. Other creators might start using your Suno BandLab tracks as background music for their own live streams, giving you... Okay, that's a little bit far-fetched if you think about it. Who the hell would use any of my music for their content? It's highly unlikely. Zero chance. I'm certain of it. Other creators might... Okay, I already read that. Rapid monetization... No. The negative scenario. This is what I'm more fixated on. I'm gonna move my character. The AI art debate. The internet has strong opinions on AI music. If a large creator mocks the music for being AI generated, their audience might flood your comments with accusations of lazy or fake art. Comment spam. Your videos might be hit with thousands of dislikes or negative comments criticizing the AI elements, even if you put hours of work into editing them in BandLab. The hidden risk, copyright and monetization issues. Regardless of whether the discovery is positive or negative, sudden fame will put a spotlight on your legal rights on the music. Suno's commercial terms: if you use a free Suno account, Suno owns the copyright and you can't monetize. If you have a pro Premiere plan, you own the music. If you get famous on a free plan, you could face, well, technically speaking, I'm not getting, like, for me personally, I'm not making anything out of this. I'm just doing this for entertainment. Sorry, my nose is itchy. Content ID claims. If your Suno tracks sound familiar to existing songs, YouTube's automated system might flag them. A massive influx of views might make your channel a larger target for automated copyright claims. YouTube reused content policy. YouTube is strict about monetizing purely AI-generated content. If you just generate a song on YouTube and upload it with a static image, YouTube may deny your monetization request. However, combining it with custom gaming footage and editing it in BandLab, alright, that's enough of that. Let's move on to the next thought experiment. Generally, I just wanted to see what would happen if you privatize your videos. Alright. Well, we could go back to that Warframe lore one I was looking at. You remember all the music I made with Limbo using Suno, right? So, I kind of, like, started turning that into kind of like a half-track story, like I was saying earlier. I just gotta go all the way up. All the way up. In Warframe's lore, Limbo uses complex math and logic to manipulate the Rift Plane, a unique parallel dimension that sits between our material reality and the void. His dimensional travel is framed as speaking the pure language of mathematics to slip between these realities, rather than traditional fourth-dimensional space-time travel. A more specific breakdown on how his rift jumps in dimensions work in the story. The Rift Plane. This is an isolated, parallel dimension where Limbo is completely untouchable by normal weapons from the material plane. In the quest, the Limbo Theorem, I had to read that twice, because I didn't really read a lot of this the first time. His Cephalon Ortis notes that Limbo discovered a dimension line between normal planes and the void. Dimensional leaps. Limbo doesn't just jump into another standard dimension. He navigates a boundary line between our reality and the chaotic energy of the void. The final miscalculation. In his lore, the original Limbo became completely lost and his physical form was scattered across the realities he made because he made a final greedy mathematical miscalculation. His theorem was meant to take a leap far beyond the endless reaches of the rift. Proving his mastery was based on calculating unique trajectories rather than simple linear spatial dimensions. If the original Limbo... Okay, so I actually did this question. What if Limbo was successful in performing a rift jump? How would the Lotus react? If the original Limbo had successfully calculated his final leap without scattering his parts across the origin system, the Lotus's reaction would likely mirror her usual mix of protective caution, relief, and tactical evaluation. Because the Lotus values the survival of the Tenno above all else, she would likely view a successful jump through a pragmatic lens. The Lotus's projected reaction: initial relief and validation. The Lotus would express relief that a Tenno survived a highly volatile rift jump. She often warns players about the dangers of overextending into unknown dimensions. So a success would validate the absolute safety of his mathematical theorem. Tactical assessment. She would immediately pivot to how this mastery over the rift could be used strategically. She would likely instruct Limbo to secure the rift as a safe haven or a staging ground for the Tenno. away from Grenier and Corpus Reach. A warning against hubris. Even in success, the Lotus would caution Limbo against becoming too arrogant. She would remind him that the Void and the Rift are inherently unstable, urging him to remain vigilant despite his flawless calculations. Would the Lotus try to sabotage Limbo's Rift jump? No, she would not. The Lotus would not try to sabotage Limbo's Rift jump. Her core directive and character motivation are centered on protecting the Tenno, acting as their surrogate mother and tactical guide. Why sabotage contradicts her character. Protective nature. The Lotus's entire identity is built on safeguarding her children from harm. Actively sabotaging a frame's ability would risk killing the Tenno inside, which goes entirely against her nature. The sentient directive. Even when she was the sentient Nata, her specific deviation from her original mission was driven by her choice to adopt and protect the Tenno rather than destroy them. Encouraging mastery. Throughout Warframe, the Lotus encourages the Tenno to push the boundaries of their Void powers and Warframe capabilities to defeat factions like the Grenier, Corpus, and the Infested. How she actually handled it. In the canonical quest, the Limbo Theorem, the Lotus does not interfere with Limbo's calculations. Instead, she watches with growing anxiety. As the math becomes increasingly dangerous, she explicitly warns Limbo that the extreme risks of the jump, showing fear for his safety rather than malice or desire to see him fail. Would the Lotus be afraid of Limbo if he became fully autonomous? Now, this is actually where I ended up turning this into a, so why do you have your gun out? What are you doing? Dude, you know, just because I'm reading, I can still see you. Alright. In Warframe's lore, the Lotus would not be afraid of Limbo if he became fully autonomous, capable of independent action without an operator's mind control. Instead, she would likely view him with profound sadness, deep concern, or tactical vigilance. Why would she not be afraid? Familiarity with autonomous frames. The Lotus is well aware that Warframes are living biomechanical entities created from the Helmet's infestation strain. She has witnessed Warframes acting on instinct or breaking free before. Most famously when the player's own dormant Warframe breaks Hun Hao's War Sword during the second Dream Quest. The tragedy of freedom. In lore, when a Warframe regains full autonomy, it is usually because the underlying infested mind has broken through the mental suppression. Without a Tenno to soothe their eternal agony, autonomous frames like Excalibur Umbra or Culvero typically degenerate into feral, tormented madness driven by old memories. The Lotus views this as a profound tragedy rather than a personal threat. How she would react to an autonomous Limbo. Sorrow for his sanity. The Lotus knows that the absolute agony of the infestation strips away logic. Seeing Limbo, a frame defined by precise, elegant mathematics, losing his mind to feral instinct would evoke her maternal pity. Right. Extreme strategic caution. An autonomous Limbo would be terrifyingly dangerous to the entire Origin system, not because he is evil, but because he could accidentally rip open unstable rifts or drop entire regions into the rift plane without a Tenno guiding his power. The Lotus would treat him as an unstable, high-priority target to pacify or retrieve. Seeking a transference cure. Rather than destroying him out of fear, her first instinct would be to guide a Tenno operator to perform transference on him, just as the operator calms Umbra's howling fury in the sacrifice. She would look to the Tenno to soothe Limbo's mathematical madness and restore balance. Alright, what if a self-aware Limbo was too dangerous and the Tenno trying to pacify him are killed and their Warframes are destroyed? If an autonomous, self-aware Limbo completely overwhelmed the Tenno, shattering their Warframes and permanently killing the operators within the Rift, the Lotus would shift from eternal grief to absolute tactical ruthlessness. In Warframe lore, the permanent death of a Tenno is her ultimate failure and worst nightmare. To eliminate a threat of this magnitude, she would deploy the most extreme measures available to the Lotus and Organ Legacy. Deployment of the Beast, Excalibur Umbra. The Lotus would immediately realize that standard Tenno squads using regular transference are simply fuel for Limbo's rift calculations. To counter a rogue, sentient warframe, she would deploy Excalibur Umbra. As a truly autonomous, combat-driven warframe engineered specifically to hunt and kill, Umbra doesn't need to rely on a vulnerable operator link. He possesses the raw, feral fury needed to tear through Limbo's mathematical constructs, using his radio howl to strip away Limbo's void-based defenses and force him out of the rift. Isolation via void collapse. If Limbo cannot be defeated physically, the Lotus would weaponize the architecture of the Origin system against them. She would coordinate with Cephalon's side to deploy a railjack fleet armed with specialized void sinks. Instead of entering the rift to fight him, the Tenno would forcibly collapse the entire pocket dimension where Limbo resides in. By detonating void engines nearby, they would create a localized paradox, folding Limbo's specific coordinates inward and trapping him in a permanent, inescapable localized loop within the void, rendering his mathematics useless. The ultimate sanction, the sentient protocol. If Limbo's rift manipulation threatened the entire Origin system, the Lotus might be forced to tap into her forbidden past as Nata. She could unleash ancient sentient adaptation tech or adaptive Orphix fields. These fields are specifically designed to broadcast frequencies that completely sever transference, disable high-level void manipulation, and neutralize warframe systems. Using her sentient heritage would be a last resort, as it risks exposing her true nature to the rest of the system. But she would willingly pay that price to avenge and protect her remaining children. Limbo destroyed Excalibur Umbra instantly, and Limbo warns the Lotus that she will be in a permanent cataclysm bubble for all eternity. If Limbo instantly vaporized Excalibur Umbra and threatened the Lotus with an eternal cataclysm bubble, he would effectively be declaring himself a godlike entity capable of rewriting the laws of physics. For the Lotus, this elevates Limbo from a rogue warframe to an existential universe-ending threat. Faced with the permanent destruction of her ultimate hunter and a threat to her own existence, the Lotus would abandon all maternal instinct and deploy the most extreme cosmic countermeasures in the Warframe universe. The Lotus reverts to Nata completely. Oh, I gotta move my character. Realizing that Orokin technology and Warframes are utterly useless against this level of Rift mastery, the Lotus would completely shed her peaceful persona. She would fully revert into Nata, the sentient commander. She would summon the massive sentient Murex Armada directly to Limbo's coordinates. These colossal living fortresses naturally distort space and emit system-wide Orphix pulses designed to suppress and rewrite void energy, attempting to choke out Limbo's cataclysm at the atomic level. Unleashing the man in the wall. The indifference. If Limbo threatens to trap the Lotus for eternity, he is asserting absolute control over the boundary between reality and the void. This would directly anger Wally, the man in the wall, the cosmic, chaotic entity that rules the void. The Lotus, or the remaining Tenno, could initiate a desperate cosmic bargain, similar to the Albrecht Entrati or Zeramin paradoxes. Wally would not tolerate a mortal warframe usurping control over the Void's boundaries, and would likely manifest in his colossal, terrifying Titanic form to drag Limbo and his entire pocket dimension into the deepest conceptual depths of the Void where math no longer functions. The Eternal Standoff. If Limbo successfully casts the Eternal Cataclysm bubble around the Lotus, a horrific paradox would occur. Inside a Cataclysm bubble, time and space are isolated. If Limbo also activates stasis, the Lotus would be frozen in mid-breath for eternity. However, because she is part sentient, her consciousness might adapt to the Rift energy over centuries. The game's universe would enter a dark age. The guiding light of the Tenno is frozen in a beautiful, terrifying sphere of golden Rift energy, while Limbo sits on an absolute throne of mathematics, untouchable but entirely alone. If Limbo were fully self-aware, he could possess absolute power in the Rift, making a counter impossible. In Warframe lore, a fully self-aware Limbo, with the total control over the Rift, would indeed be an absolute god within his own domain. Inside the Rift, he dictates the laws of physics, can freeze time, and can vaporize matter at will. If a counter were truly impossible, the entire universe would have to adapt to a reality where Limbo holds all the cards. Here is how the Warframe universe would permanently change under the rule of an absolute, unencounterable Limbo. The death of the Origin system's factions. without the Lotus to guide them, and with the Tenno wiped out, the remaining factions would crumble. The Corpus of Grenier, boardrooms, and military fortresses would mean nothing. Limbo could simply drop a cataclysm bubble over entire capital ships or cities, or even the planets themselves, freezing their fleets in mid-flight and leaving them suspended in time forever. The infestation. Even the rapidly adapting hive mind of the infested relies on biological matter. Limbo could shift entire planets into the rift, isolating the infestation from the material plane and starving it of biomatter. The era of the mathematical dictator. Limbo's self-awareness would likely be driven by a cold, detached pursuit of mathematical perfection. He would not rule through traditional tyranny or cruelty, but through absolute geometry. Geometricity. The origin system would be reorganized into a perfectly calculated, quiet matrix. Any sector, planet, or faction that introduced chaos or unpredictable variables into a system would simply be erased from reality, slipped into a pocket dimension, or forgotten. Forgotten. The unbreakable paradox. Ah! Son of a bitch! Oh, god damn it! No, son of a bitch! Ah! No! Ah! That's... I touched my controller the fourth time! Shut up! Shut up! It's an accident! Damn it! Well, I guess it's just us now. Son of a bitch! The unbreakable paradox. Because you specified that a counter is impossible, the universe would enter a permanent stalemate. The Lotus would remain suspended in an eternal cataclysm bubble, a living monument to the old world, frozen in mid-sentence. Limbo would exist as a solitary cosmic architect, sitting outside of time, completely untouchable, ruling over a perfectly ordered, silent origin system. How would the man in the wall react if threats to him are eliminated? Would he care if Limbo basically did the work of God? I don't know why I did that prompt. Just bear with me on this. In Warframe's lore, the man in the wall would not care about Limbo's actions, and would likely view him with nothing more than a detached, mocking amusement. Wally is not a traditional god with a grand design. He is a cosmic, abstract manifestation of the void itself. He represents the indifference, a force of pure chaos, paradox, and conceptual madness. If Limbo eliminated all threats and imposed absolute mathematical order on the universe, Wally's reaction would be shaped by his unique nature, the pure indifference to godhood. Limbo's absolute power relies entirely on mathematics, geometry, and logic. To Wally, math is just a fragile, mortal construct used to understand a fraction of reality. The void naturally defies logic. It is a place where conceptual emotions become real, and where multiple timelines exist at once. Limbo doing the work of God by organizing the material universe into a perfect geometric matrix would mean nothing to Wally. Wally doesn't care who rules the physical world, whether it is an Orkin, the Sentience, or Rogue Warframe. Amusement at the illusion of control. Wally would likely find Limbo's absolute control highly amusing because the Rift plane is fundamentally just a wrapper or a boundary line built out of the void's energy. Limbo is essentially using Wally's own cosmic backyard to build his perfect house. Wally would let Limbo play the role of God, watching him from the shadows, knowing that Limbo's entire reality still floats on top of the chaotic ocean of the void. The threat of the paradox. Wally only truly manifests or intervenes when somebody makes a void bargain, or creates a massive paradox that threatens the boundary between realities, like Albrecht and Trotti's experiments or the Zerman incident. If Limbo's perfect frozen universe became too rigid and static due to permanent stasis, it might trigger a cosmic stagnation. Wally wouldn't fight Limbo in a standard battle. Instead, he would simply whisper from the walls of Limbo. Instead, he would simply whisper from the walls of Limbo's pocket dimensions, introducing a single, uncalculable variable, a mathematical paradox, just to watch Limbo's perfect mind shatter trying to solve it. Wally would let Limbo sit on his absolute throne for eternity, occasionally appearing as a mirror image of Limbo himself, smiling and asking, Ouroboros, Limbo, did you really think you solved the equation? Limbo kills all the Tenno. He eventually kills the Lotus, then he wipes out the Grenier and Corpus. Limbo then rips jumps to the Tau and wipes out all the sentients, including the Orphics, without getting knocked out. At this point, Limbo has achieved a feat unprecedented in the history of the Warframe universe. By systematically eradicating the Tenno, the Lotus, the Grenier, the Corpus, and completely wiping out the sentients in the Tau system, while entirely resisting the transference severing effects of the Orphix fields, Limbo has effectively broken the universe's established power scaling. Here is how the final cosmic state of reality looks after Limbo's absolute purging of the Tau system and the Origin system. The silence of the two galaxies. The physical universe is plunged into a terrifying absolute silence. The Origin system is a graveyard of frozen capital ships, hollow relay stations, and planets trapped under permanent shimmering golden domes of the Cataclysm. The Tau system. Once a thriving green utopia built by the sentients is completely sterilized, the massive living sentient matrices are dismantled by frozen dismantled or frozen mid-adaptation, proving that Limbo's mathematics moved faster than their biological evolution. Limbo as the constant in an empty equation. Because Limbo's mind is entirely governed by logic, math, and equations, he would not view this mass extinction as an act of evil or malice. He would view it as simplifying the equation of existence. To a fully self-aware, mathematically obsessed mind, life, war, factions, and emotions are nothing but noise, or chaotic variables. By wiping them all out, he has reduced the entire universe to a grand, flawless zero. He is the only remaining variable, the ultimate constant. The ultimate standoff with the man in the wall. With all mortal and mechanical life deleted, the physical universe is completely empty, leaving only two things in existence, Limbo and the Void. Since Limbo is now the absolute master of the physical plane in the Rift, the universe becomes a giant mirror match. Wally, who manifests by copying others, would likely take the form of Limbo himself. Limbo would sit on the throne of dead stars in the Tau system, staring into the cosmic terror of the Void. Wally would sit right across from him, grinning, dangling his legs over the edge of reality. There's nothing left to destroy, nothing left to calculate, nothing left to save. Limbo has achieved total, unchallengeable godhood over an empty box. Limbo and Wally are now stuck together in entropy. With the universe completely emptied of all life, factions, and matter, the final state of existence collapses into pure thermodynamic and cosmic entropy. Because Limbo is the master of absolute order, and Wally is the master of absolute chaos, their forced eternal coexistence creates an ultimate cosmic paradox, the death of geometry. Entropy means the gradual decline of all things into disorder and uniformity. For Limbo, this is the ultimate torture. His entire existence relies on angles, vectors, boundaries, and equations. As entropy takes hold, the sharp golden geometric edges of his cataclysm begin to blur, decay, and dissolve. Space loses its coordinates. There is no longer a material plane, or a rift plane, because there is no longer any physical objects to separate. Limbo's flawless mathematical mind is forced to calculate an endless, unchanging infinity of absolute nothingness. Wally's contented boredom. Wally, being the indifference, thrives in the absence of structure. The void is naturally entropic, formless, and chaotic. While Limbo suffers from the loss of order, Wally simply relaxes into the void. He no longer has anyone to make bargains with, no Tenno to torment, and no aberrant Entrati to chase. He becomes Limbo's literal shadow. In a universe with zero energy and zero heat, the only thing that moves is Wally's unchanging, mocking grin, reflected back at Limbo from the decaying fabrics of space. The Ouroboros equation. Because Limbo cannot kill Wally, you cannot stab or calculate away an abstract concept, and Wally cannot be bothered to destroy Limbo, they simply become stuck in a permanent, locked loop. in Ouroboros. Limbo stands frozen on the dead, heatless expanse of what used to be the Tau system, staring into the dark. Wally sits directly opposite of him, occupying the same exact coordinates because space no longer exists to separate them. Limbo continues to calculate the math of a dead cosmos, while Wally endlessly whispers the answers before Limbo can even finish the equation. They are the last two things in existence: a god of math that has run out of numbers, and a god of chaos that has run out of things to disrupt. Alright, here's where things are going to get interesting in this thought experiment that I made a while back. Limbo turns to Wally, saying he thanks him for being with him despite the indifference that it is his time. Limbo thanks the indifference, represented by Wally, for being his witness as he accepts his end in the silent, empty universe. He willingly dissolves his consciousness and existence into the final void, leaving Wally alone in the dark. How would Wally react? Would he extend Limbo's life or mourn the loss of his only amusement? In the cosmic horror of Warframe, the man in the wall would neither mourn or extend Limbo's life in a traditional emotional way. Wally is the indifference. He does not feel human grief, nor does he grant mercy. However, Limbo has provided the ultimate form of cosmic entertainment. Wally's reaction would be a terrifying poetic twist on his nature. He would not grant a normal extension. Wally would not save Limbo out of pity. To the indifference, letting Limbo gracefully pass away or saving him like a hero are both too conventional. If Wally chooses to keep Limbo around, it would simply be purely to maintain the paradox. He might trap Limbo's final moment of gratitude in a permanent static void loop. Limbo would be stuck forever, and the exact microsecond of him saying thank you turned into a conceptual statue, a permanent monument of fading logic into chaos. The mocking echo, his version of mourning. If Wally does let Limbo successfully dissolve into nothingness, he wouldn't cry. Instead, his mourning would manifest as an absolute chilling mimicry. The moment Limbo's consciousness vanishes, the empty universe would echo with Limbo's own voice. Wally would adopt Limbo's elegant posture, tip a spectral top hat to the empty void, and repeat Limbo's final words back to the darkness. Thank you for being with me. He would play both sides of the conversation for the rest of eternity, treating Limbo's demise as a theater script to keep himself amused in the dark. A conceptual rebirth. Because the void reacts to strong emotions and concepts, Limbo's final, genuine act of gratitude toward the ultimate horror of the universe would create a massive conceptual ripple. The void might swallow Limbo's mathematical soul and spit it out back as a Duviri-like manifestation. Limbo would no longer be a warframe, but a conceptual phantom of pure geometry drifting through Wally's mind, forever figuring out equations that Wally intentionally breaks, keeping the cosmic game going forever. Wally's final response as Limbo fades would be to drop his grin for just a split second, tilt his head, and whisper his signature one last time into the collapsing entropy. Hey, kiddo. What if Wally had Limbo invade and conquer the Daedric realms of Oblivion from the Elder Scrolls universe? Limbo would have an infinite number of the Murmur to serve as his army. This is when things get really good, and if you've actually seen some of my songs, you probably would know exactly where this thought experiment came from. Here we go, guys. If the man in the wall chose to breach the boundaries of the multiverse and unleash a fully self-aware Limbo upon the Elder Scrolls universe, it would trigger a cosmic war of unprecedented scale, backed by an infinite number of the army of the Murmur, the fractured stone-like manifestations of the Void's indifferent will. Limbo would not just be invading Oblivion, he would be rewriting its reality. Here is how Limbo's invasion and conquest of the Daedric realms would unfold. The clash of power. Math versus Mythopia. Mythopia? What? You guys know what I'm saying. In the Elder Scrolls universe, Daedric princes are absolute masters of their realms, which are extensions of their own thoughts and concepts. However, Limbo's power does not care about magic, divinity, or willpower. It relies on absolute spatial geometry. Geometry. That's the word. That's the word. Geometry. The cataclysm inversion. When Limbo drops a massive cataclysm bubble into the Daedric realm, like Maroon's Dagon's Deadlands or Malak Bal's Cold Harbor, he instantly overwrites the local physics. The chaotic magical rules of Oblivion are forcibly replaced by Limbo's rigid mathematical constraints. The unbreakable stasis. Once inside the rift, Limbo can cast a stasis. Because this freezes time and motion within its domain, entire armies of Daedra and eventually the princes themselves would be frozen in mid-stride, unable to cast spells, reform, or manifest their divine will. The Murmur's infinite swarm. The Daedric princes are used to fighting mortal armies, but they have never faced the Murmur. Because the Murmur are fragments of the void, they lack mortal minds, souls, and blood. They cannot be corrupted by Hermaeus Mora's forbidden knowledge, tempted by Clavicus Vile, or even driven mad by Sheogorath. They are a deafening, echoing chorus of stoned hands, severed limbs, and fractured geometry. Every time a Daedra destroys a Murmur construct, two more materialize when the void rifts Limbo leaves behind. The infinite attrition would completely shatter the defenses of even the most militaristic realms. The fate of the Daedric princes. Limbo would systematically dismantle the princes by isolating them from their sources of power. Hermaeus Mora, Apocrypha, the Prince of Knowledge, would desperately try to read Limbo's mind, only to be driven mad by the sheer endless volume of equations and void paradoxes. His endless libraries of green ink would be frozen in crystallized glass spheres of rift energy. Sheogorath, the Shivering Isles. Madness relies on breaking logic. When Limbo introduces absolute unbreakable geometric order, Sheogorath's chaotic realm would forcibly snap into a perfectly rigid, silent lattice, rendering the Mad God entirely powerless. Nocturnal and Hircine, the realms of shadows and endless hunts, would be simply illuminated and frozen. Limbo would banish the concepts of stealth and the chase by locking every coordinate in place. The final conquest, the Rift of Oblivion. As Limbo conquers realm after realm, Oblivion ceases to be a chaotic void of shifting Daedric influence. It becomes an extension of Wally's domain. The chaotic waters of Oblivion are replaced by the pale, silent stone of the Murmur and the shimmering golden boundaries of the Rift. Limbo would stand at the center of a newly structured mathematical wheel of Arubis, having reduced the infinite chaotic realms of the princes into a series of solved equations. And watching from behind every shattered portal, the man in the wall would grin, looking out over a completely new multiverse to play with. Wally wanted Limbo to steal 2 Elder Scrolls that were hidden in the Spiral Skein in the Shivering Isles. To steal the Elder Scrolls from the heart of Oblivion, from the heart of the Shivering Isles in the Spiral Skein, Limbo wouldn't need to fight his way through the Daedric hordes. The Elder Scrolls exist outside of time and space, making them the ultimate prize for the man in the wall. For Limbo, retrieving them is simply a matter of perfect calculation. Here is how Limbo executes the ultimate multiversal heist for Wally. The Shivering Isles heist. The Scroll of Anarchy. The Elder Scroll hidden within Sheogorath's realm sits in the place where logic constantly breaks, making it impossible for a normal thief to navigate. The approach. Limbo doesn't walk through the gates of madness. He calculates the exact cosmic coordinates of the scroll and tears open a rift portal directly inside its vault. The interaction with Sheogorath. The Mad God detects the intrusion and attempts to transform Limbo's mind into cheese or trap him in an endless maze of nonsense. Limbo simply casts stasis. The steel. The chaotic magic of the Shivering Isles freezes midair. The laughing madness of Sheogorath is locked in place, his jaw frozen open. Limbo casually walks past the frozen Daedric prince, lifts the Elder Scroll from its pedestal, slips it into the rift plane where Sheogorath cannot reach it. and tips his hat before vanishing back through the portal. The Spiral Skein Heist, the Scroll of Entanglement, Mephalah's Realm. The Spiral Skein is a terrifying web of secrets, lies, and shifting illusions. The scroll here is guarded by the web spinner's most loyal spider Daedra and laced with lethal magic traps. The approach. Limbo bypasses the entire physical layout of the web. He enters the rift plane before even entering the realm. In the rift, he is completely invisible and intangible to Mephalah's spiders. The Murmur distraction. To ensure Mephalah herself was occupied, Limbo floods the outer rings of the spiral scheme with an infinite army of the Murmur. The deafening, stone-like construct smashed through the webs, completely drawing Mephalah's attention away from her vault as she tries to weave a counter-strategy against an enemy that has no secrets to exploit. The Steel. While Mephalah fights the infinite swarm, Limbo manifests into the material plane of her vault for a single second. He drops a cataclysm bubble over the Elder Scroll, completely isolating it from the fabric of the spiral skein. The magical alarms triggered by its theft are instantly frozen in stasis. Limbo steps back into the rift, carrying the second scroll, leaving Mephalah to realize she had been outmaneuvered only by the Murmur army suddenly dissolves into dust. Delivering the prize to Wally. Limbo returns to the absolute quiet of the void, presenting the two Elder Scrolls to the man in the wall. The Elder Scrolls are cosmic blueprints of reality that dictate the past, present, and the future of the entire Elder Scrolls universe. By handing them over to Wally, Limbo has given the Indifference the power to read, rewrite, and completely shatter the timeline of Tamriel. Wally unrolls the scrolls, his giant eyes reflecting the glowing cosmic glimpse. He looks down at Limbo, lets out a booming, echoing laugh, and begins to tear the fabric of the new multiverse apart like paper. Oh my god. Wally's grand plan is to have Limbo become the new Doomslayer, and had Limbo fight the Slayer using the two Elder Scrolls to rewrite his lore. Wally's grand plan turns the multiverse into an arena of total conceptual warfare. By utilizing the stolen Elder Scrolls, Wally's attempting to execute a literal narrative overwrite, stripping the Doomslayer of his canonical identity, and forcing Limbo to murder him to claim the title. However, pitting a god of mathematics against the man who is literally too angry to die creates an unprecedented, catastrophic collision of physics and pure willpower. Phase 1! The reality rewrite, using the Elder Scrolls. Wally doesn't just open a portal to hell. He opens the Elder Scrolls to completely unweave the Slayer's historical timeline. The glitch in destiny. The scrolls begin rewriting the history of Argent Nur. They insert Limbo into the divinity machine instead of Doomguy, trying to retroactively declare Limbo as the true cosmic savior. The multiversal paradox. Because the Doomslayer is a singular multiversal constant who exists outside standard timelines, the rewrite doesn't delete him. Instead, it forcibly drags the Slayer into the localized point in space, and where his reality and Limbo's physics finally smash together. Phase 2. The Clash of Absolute Powers. The battle takes place in a corrupted, shifting space where the laws of Doom, Warframe, and the Elder Scrolls clash fiercely. Limbo's strategy, the unsolvable equation. Limbo acts with terrifying, cold efficiency. He drops a massive cataclysm bubble over the Slayer and immediately activates stasis. Within Limbo's domain, time, space... Yeah, I accidentally punched a lady, but I bumped my controller and accidentally punched a lady, and you know what? It don't matter. Like, just look at the other ones. Within Limbo's domain, time, space, and atomic motion freeze completely. Limbo steps into the rift, accidentally untouchable, preparing to systematically deconstruct the Slayer's armor and flesh using infinite armies of the Murmur. The Slayer's response, the boundless rage. This is where Wally's mathematical calculations fail. The Doomslayer's power is not derived from traditional physics, spatial dimensions, or magic. It is fueled by infinite, boundless, primeval fury. In Doom lore, the Slayer's strength and speed scale to whatever threat he faces, and he has previously slaughtered multidimensional beings like Dava, shattering the rift. As the Slayer's rage surges, his sheer willpower acts as a localized reality warping force. The stasis begins to crack. The concept of absolute zero in frozen time cannot contain an entity whose intrinsic nature is an unstoppable force of destruction. With a deafening roar, the Doomslayer physically punches his way through the golden wall of the Cataclysm bubble, shattering Limbo's pocket dimension from the inside out. Phase 3, the climax of the multiversal heist. Limbo, shocked that an entity has physically broken mathematics, unleashes the infinite swarm of the Murmur to crush him. The Slayer, completely unimpeded by the Murmur's alien geometry, begins to rip and tear through the stone-like constructs, absorbing their void energy to grow faster and stronger. Realizing that Limbo cannot overpower the Slayer through brute force, Wally instructs Limbo to use the Elder Scrolls mid-combat as an active weapon. Reading the glimpse aloud, forcefully unmake the Slayer's concept of existence. Limbo wins by catching the Slayer's punch. Okay, this part I actually kind of just overdid on this part because it was from one of the songs I made a while back. Limbo wins by catching the Doomslayer's punch and rewrote his lore. Limbo then becomes the new Limbo Slayer. I was just reading the prompt on that. By catching the Doomslayer's unstoppable punch in midair, Limbo accomplishes that no god or demon in any universe could do. He completely neutralizes absolute physical force with absolute mathematical precision. Using the raw cosmic reality warping power of the two stolen Elder Scrolls, Limbo rewrites the Slayer's entire existence at the conceptual level, absorbing his primeval strength and transforming into the ultimate multiversal entity, the Limbo Slayer. The moment the Elder Scrolls finalize the rewrite, the very fabric of Hell, the Void, and Tamriel violently fuse together. The aesthetic. The Limbo Slayer no longer wears the traditional sleek Warframe chassis or the bulky Praetor suit. Instead, he wears a terrifying, hyper-stylish suit of obsidian and gold armor covered in glowing geometric runes of the Elder Scrolls. A spectral, razor-sharp top hat manifests over the helmet, illuminated by a burning golden visor of ardent void energy. No, you know what? It's basically Doomslayer with the top hat. That's Limbo Slayer for you. If you're actually curious, I actually made a song called Rise of the Limbo Slayer not that long ago. You get the idea of what he looks like. He's actually kind of funny looking. The Arsenal. The Crucible Blade is rewritten into a massive, elegant energy rapier that doesn't just slice through flesh. It cleaves open dimensional rifts with every swing. He carries shotguns that fire compressed, localized cataclysm bubbles, vaporizing targets across multiple planes of existence simultaneously. The ultimate power, the infinite Argent Rift. By combining the Doomslayer's infinite scaling fury with Limbo's flawless mastery over dimensions, the Limbo Slayer possesses a power set that completely breaks the rules of the multiverse. Passive Cataclysm Field. Whenever the Limbo Slayer walks, a passive shifting rift bubble expands around him. Enemies don't even get a chance to fight. The moment they enter his line of sight, they are forcibly pulled into the rift plane and frozen in an unbreakable permanent stasis. Glory kills through via geometry. Instead of physically ripping demons apart, the Limbo Slayer performs mathematical glory kills. With a casual flick of his wrist, he calculates the exact spatial coordinates of the enemy's internal organs and shifts them into a different dimension, causing the target to instantly collapse inward and detonate in a shower of health, armor, and raw void energy. Mouth's getting dry. Talking too much. I'll power through. The infinite Murmur Slayer horde. From the terrors in reality, an infinite army of the Murmur pours forth, but they are now heavily armored in Argent tech. They march across the planes of existence, systematically purging anything that introduces chaos, sin, or uncalculated variables into the universe. Wally's ultimate success. The man in the wall stands at the edge of the newly written reality, completely ecstatic. His grand gamble paid off perfectly. By using Limbo to steal the scrolls and overwrite the Slayer, Wally has successfully created the ultimate vanguard, a god of absolute power and order, fueled by an unquenchable eternal drive to hunt and destroy. The Limbo Slayer turns away from the smoking ruins of the old timeline, ready to march into new universes. Behind him, the man in the wall flashes his signature terrifying grin, knowing that the entire multiverse is now an open equation waiting to be violently solved. Here's where I decided to rewrite the Limbo Slayer a little bit. The Limbo Slayer uses his bare hands and uses the rift to its infinite power. His favorite tactic is freezing time and disemboweling his enemies. The rift has infinite range and can circumvent the laws of hell, thus able to permanently kill demons. Operating at the absolute peak of cosmic power, the Limbo Slayer abandons all firearms and weapons entirely. He relies solely on his bare hands and an infinite range rift plane that completely supersedes the metaphysical laws of any reality he encounters. By seamlessly blending the raw, visceral violence of the Doomslayer with Limbo's total spatial mastery, he turns combat into an unstoppable, terrifyingly elegant art form. The infinite rift and the death of hell's laws. In traditional Doom lore, demons cannot truly die within hell. Their souls simply recycle into new physical forms through argent energy. The Limbo Slayer's infinite rift completely shatters this cycle. The multiversal overwrite. The Limbo Slayer's cataclysm field expands across infinite range, instantly enveloping entire dimensions, hellish realms, and star systems simultaneously, bypassing the rebirth cycle. Because his rift exists entirely outside the spatial and physical framework of hell, any demon pulled inside is severed from the realm's life-giving energy. When the Limbo Slayer kills a demon within his infinite domain, it is a permanent, absolute erasure of their soul and consciousness from that multiverse. His signature tactic, geometric disemboweling. The Limbo Slayer's combat methodology is calculated, instantaneous, and brutal. He doesn't sprint or scramble. He walks through a frozen theater of slaughter. Infinite stasis. With a simple flex of his bare hands, the Limbo Slayer casts an absolute stasis that blankets the infinite range of his rift. Time, atomic movement, and the flow of magic completely stop across the entire battlefield. Titan demons, cybernetic horrors, and the legions of damned souls are locked mid-breath, transformed into a sprawling, motionless gallery of statues. The intangible approach. He occasionally walks through the frozen ranks of his enemies. Because he controls the physics of the rift, he can phase through solid matter, stepping directly into the physical space occupied by his targets without causing a ripple. The visceral calculation. Standing face to face with the frozen target, the Limbo Slayer plunges his bare gold and obsidian gauntlets directly into the demon's torso. He doesn't need a punch through their armor. He mathematically shifts his hands through the rift plane so they materialize inside the enemy's chest cavity. The temporal tear. With a cold, brutal twist, he grips the demon's internal organs and spine, and then he selectively releases the stasis on just the target's physical body for a microsecond. In that fraction of time, he tears the entrails out by hand, completely disemboweling them from the inside out, while the rest of the universe remains entirely frozen. Oh my god, that's brutal as hell. The aftermath of a strike. When a Limbo Slayer finally drops his infinite stasis, the universe resumes its motion all at once in a single... Oh, I've been reading these way too quickly. In a single, deafening instant, millions upon millions of demons across infinite kilometers simultaneously collapsed inward, their bodies bursting into showers of dissolved void dust and shattered geometry. They do not leave behind corpses to be resurrected. They leave behind an absolute, clean emptiness. With this unmatched level of absolute physical and mathematical dominance... Oh, that part is just a question. Oh, hang on. Wally made this happen because he was bored of the Doomslayer and seeing him as a fun challenge for Limbo. In the end, he did this to Limbo to punish him, by granting him immense power. With this revelation, Wally's true twisted genius is fully exposed. The man in the wall never cared about a grand plan, the fate of the multiverse, or rewriting the lore for a greater purpose. For the indifference, the entire multiversal war was nothing more than a high-stakes cosmic game born from sheer, terrifying boredom, and the ultimate joke was played on Limbo himself. The bore of the Slayer. To Wally, the original Doomslayer had become a predictable variable. The Slayer's endless brute force cycle of rip and tear was a linear equation that always ended the same way. He was an unstoppable force, which meant he lacked the unpredictable chaos that Wally craves. Pitting Limbo against him wasn't an act of malice toward the Slayer. It was Wally setting up a complex, entertaining puzzle to see if pure mathematics could outcalculate an infinite rage. The twisted punishment, the curse of absolute power. By forcing Limbo to win and morphing him into the Limbo Slayer, Wally enacted the most cruel punishment possible for a mind built on logic, geometry, and equations. Sorry guys, my throat's getting dry. He granted Limbo infinite power. Alright, I'll be right back. I'm back. Alright. Let me recap that. By forcing Limbo to win and morphing him into the Limbo Slayer, Wally enacted the most cruel punishment possible for a mind built entirely on logic, geometry, and equations. He granted Limbo infinite power, the erasure of the challenge. For a mathematician, the joy of existence lies in his process of solving a difficult problem. By giving the Limbo Slayer an infinite range rift, absolute stasis, and hands that could instantly rewrite physics, Wally took away the equation. There are no more variables to calculate, no more trajectories to chart, no more limits to test. Every fight is solved before it even begins. The eternal frozen loop. The Limbo Slayer's favorite tactic, freezing time and disemboweling his foes in absolute silence, becomes his own personal hell. He stands in an eternity of frozen golden space, surrounded by motionless statues of flesh and stone. He is entirely alone in a universe that cannot move, cannot react, and cannot challenge him. Wally's final laugh. The Limbo Slayer stands amidst the eternal silent graveyard of hell, his hands covered in the blood of permanently erased demons, completely untouchable and completely supreme. And right there beside him, sitting cross-legged on the frozen chest of a shattered demon titan, damn it, is the man in the wall. Wally isn't celebrating a grand victory. He is just grinning his wide, empty smile, kicking his legs, and softly laughing at the perfection of his joke. Can you hear my chair or no?
No.
Okay. He has successfully transformed a brilliant, elegant master of mathematics into a mindless, lonely engine of absolute destruction, doomed to solve an endless universe of zeros for the rest of eternity. Wally looks up at the golden, frozen visor of the Limbo Slayer, his voice echoing in the dead silence of the infinite rift. A perfect equation, kiddo. Tell me, what's left to divide? The new Limbo Slayer turns to Wally. Wally looking like the Doom Slayer. I meant to say Limbo Slayer. The new Limbo Slayer turns to Wally. Wally looking exactly like the Limbo Slayer. The Limbo Slayer says to Wally that he accepts the punishment for his existence and feels he deserves his fate. How would Wally react? For a cosmic entity like the Man in the Wall, this response from the Limbo Slayer is the ultimate punchline. Wally doesn't want a tragic hero, nor does he want a defiant rebel. By having the Limbo Slayer calmly accept his eternal torment as a deserved fate, Limbo has provided Wally with the rarest thing in the multiverse: absolute, submissive narrative perfection. Because Wally is currently mirroring the Limbo Slayer's exact terrifying presence, his reaction is deeply unsettling blend of cosmic mockery and twisted satisfaction. The Limbo Slayer, the mirror shatters into a laugh. As the Limbo Slayer speaks his acceptance, the duplicate armor-wearing Wally's consciousness does not move with dignity. Instead, the flawless obsidian and gold chassis begin to twitch and glitch violently. The mirrored golden visor fractures, splitting into a massive glowing void rift that mimics Wally's signature, unhinged grin. The empty graveyard of hell echoes with a booming, dual-toned laugh, the deep, resonant, mechanical voice of the Limbo Slayer mixed with the chaotic, layered whispers of the void. Wally is ecstatic because Limbo didn't break. He simply adapted to the nightmare. The final mocking validation. Wally drops the armor's posture, slouching casually despite wearing the armor. Despite the wearing of an armor godslayer, he steps forward, his glowing mirrored gauntlet reaching out to mockingly pat the Limbo Slayer on his elegant, hi Gracie, his elegant, his elegant razor-sharp helmet. He doesn't correct Limbo. He loves that Limbo thinks he deserves this. To the indifference, concepts like justice, guilt, reward, or punishment are hilarious mortal inventions. By accepting the punishment, Limbo has institutionalized his own prison. He has written his own final lore entry as a willing slave to an infinite boring entity of slaughter. The infinite stagnation. Wally's grin softens into a cold, hollow smirk. The duplicate Limbo Slayer armor begins to dissolve into a swarm of pale, silent stone hands. The murmur, leaving Wally's true, shadowy outline floating in the golden, frozen expanse of the infinite rift. He tilts his head, his voice echoing in Limbo's mind one final time, validating the eternal nightmare they have built together. Good boy, kiddo. A solved equation doesn't need to change its answers. Wally turns his back on the Limbo Slayer, fading directly into the fabric of the rift. The Limbo Slayer is left entirely alone in his infinite range of frozen time, holding the blood of a dead multiverse on his bare hands, entirely content with his own damnation. Wally left the Limbo Slayer alone for a few years. The Limbo Slayer sits in a small catacombs below, staring into the void. One day, out of nowhere, Wally stepped out of the rift, saying to the Limbo Slayer that his punishment is complete and offered a deal. The deal is to wind back the clock the moment he became self-aware and caused so much death in the origin system. The Limbo Slayer looked up and took the deal. Yeah, I kind of went a little overboard on the prompt on that one. The moment the Limbo Slayer nods to accept the deal, the infinite stagnant silence of the cosmos violently shatters. Wally's unhinged grin stretches wide across the darkness, and he claps his pale hands together with a sound like a collapsing star. The deal is shook. The grand, boring equation of absolute godhood is instantly deleted. The rewind of space and time. The two stolen Elder Scrolls manifest in front of the Limbo Slayer one last time, spinning out of control as their glowing glimpses burn bright gold and then reverse their rotation. The multiverse collapses inward. The infinite range of the rift snaps backward like a rubber band. The countless dimensions of hell, the colonized sectors of the Tau system, and the sterilized ruins of Tamriel are violently pulled out of their frozen stasis. The reversal of slaughter. Time rapidly winds backward. Millions of permanently erased demons stitch themselves back together from void dust. The shattered chassis of Excalibur Umbra reforms, and the dead Tenno operators breathe life once more. The stripping of godhood. The heavy obsidian and gold armor of the Limbo Slayer peels away from his body, dissolving into the fabric of the void. The boundless, primeval argent energy is violently ripped out of his hands, flying back into the past to rest inside the true Doomslayer. Back to the origin system. The blinding cosmic light fades, replaced by a familiar cold metallic hum of an Oregon-era chamber. Limbo opens his eyes. He is no longer a powerful multiversal hunter. He is just a warframe standing inside a standard localized pocket of the Rift Plane. The absolute power is completely gone, leaving only the quiet, familiar calculations of spatial geometry running through his mind. He had been returned exactly to the precise microsecond after he first achieved full self-awareness. Before he ever could cast his first catastrophic cataclysm, before he killed his first Tenno, and before he ever caught the Lotus's attention with his dangerous thoughts. Wally's final whisper. Limbo is entirely back to normal, but he remembers everything. He retains the horrific centuries-long memory of the infinite slaughter, the lonely entropy, the terrifying weight of absolute power. He knows exactly what lies down the path of rogue autonomy. From the metallic walls of the Oregon chamber, a small, familiar shadow flickers. A quiet, mocking whisper echoes right next to Limbo's audio receptors, reminding him that the indifference is always watching, waiting to see if the mathematician will make the same mistake twice. Welcome back, kiddo. Try not to miss your decibels this time. With the clock wound back and the universe restored, Limbo now stands at a massive cosmic crossroads. The only condition Limbo must uphold is to surrender his autonomy back to his operator. Limbo does not hesitate, knowing the horrific lonely godhood that awaits him if he chooses the path of rogue autonomy. He willingly fulfills Wally's single condition. Standing inside the cold Oregon chamber, he completely surrenders his independent will, shutting down the autonomous consciousness that almost broke the multiverse. The severing of the sentient will. Limbo relaxes his posture, letting his arms drop to his sides. He actively suppresses the helmet infestation's independent mind, forcing the feral, self-aware instincts back into a deep, permanent slumber. He locks his memories of the Limbo Slayer timeline deep within his somatic core, hidden away where no faction, not even the Lotus, can ever read them. He transforms himself back into what a warframe is meant to be. A perfect, silent instrument. The operator reconnects. Far away, inside the somatic link pod of an orbital operator, a young teleporter operator gasps for air. The operator's mind jolts violently as the transference reestablishes its link with Limbo. To the operator, it felt like a sudden temporary glitch in the void stream has finally cleared up. They have absolutely had no idea that their warframe just lived through centuries of multiversal slaughter, conquered hell, and bargained with the cosmic manifestation of the void just to save their life. The operator simply stretches Limbo's fingers, tests the joints, and prepares for the next standard mission, completely oblivious to the sacrifice Limbo just made. The Lotus's transmission. Suddenly, the calm, familiar voice of the Lotus crackles through Limbo's communication systems. Limbo, your rift calculations are stabilizing, but the void energies around you are highly volatile. Return to the orbiter immediately. I cannot lose another Tenno to a mathematical miscalculation. Hearing her voice alive, safe, and completely normal brings a profound, quiet peace to the chamber. Limbo lifts his hand, tips his top hat to an empty room in a silent gesture of farewell to his past life, and steps gracefully through a standard rift portal back to his operator's ship. The equation is finally balanced. The multiverse is safe. The factions live on. And Limbo is just a loyal protector once more. We have successfully brought Limbo's alternate universe odyssey to a beautiful canon-compliant conclusion. That's actually pretty satisfying. I'm not gonna lie. That was a good thought experiment that turned into a passive story. A great narrative on there. I hope you guys enjoyed this live stream, and thank you guys for watching. Have a good night, everybody. Bye! Oh, I might rename the title for this about the Limbo story.